Palestine and Iran are facing Israel's relentless onslaught. Only last month, Pakistan and Azad Jammu and Kashmir were also attacked by India. The attacks by Israel and India set a dangerous precedent for unilateral aggression. In the future, the armaments being extended by these aggressors could be exploited to launch attacks on other countries as well. In these challenging times, Islamic unity and joint Islamic action are required more than ever before, and the Ummah needs to be united and steadfast. Mr. Chairman, the current Indian designs in Jammu and Kashmir are in fact a replication of the Israeli designs in Palestine. The script being enacted by Israel and India in Palestine and Kashmir respectively is essentially the same with particular reference to human rights violations and relatively illegal attempts to changing the demographics in both areas. The situations are worsening and call for the urgent attention of the international community by a peaceful resolution in accordance with the relevant UN resolutions and aspirations of the local Kashmiri people. This attention, however, must not be aimed at legitimizing the status quo. Illegal and lopsided solutions cannot be unilaterally imposed. Only those solutions could bring the lasting peace which are in conformity with the international law and UN Charter. The true peace is characterized by a prevalence of justice, not absence of violence. India attacked Pakistan and Azad Jammu and Kashmir without any verifiable evidence or a credible investigation into the Pahalgam attack of 22nd of April 2025. It chose the path of belligerence and aggression despite an offer by the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif, for a transparent and independent probe into this tragic incident of Pahalgam. Most deploratively, India did not pay any heed to the calls for restraint made by the international community, including the United Nations and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. During the intervening night of 6th and 7th May, India deliberately targeted the civilian areas on the false pretext of presence of terrorist infrastructure, resulting in the martyrdom of innocent men, women and children in large numbers. India's unprovoked firing and shelling at the line of control also resulted in the loss of precious lives, houses, infrastructure and other assets. In view of India's unabated aggression, Pakistan was constrained to respond in line with Article 51 of the UN Charter to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. A response in the early hours of 10th of May 2025 was mature, calibrated, restrained and targeted only against military installations as opposed to Indians cowardly attacks on the civilian populations in Pakistan. The purpose of our action was to demonstrate our right, will and capability to defend our territory, people and our motherland. We also meaningfully, responded to the air and the sky fight on the night between 6th and 7th of May by downing 6 jet fighters of India, including 4 Rafales, 1 Su-30 and 1 MiG. Mr. Chairman, these disturbing developments have once again shown that a peaceful settlement of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute is imperative for a lasting peace in South Asia. The region is home to over one-fifth of the world population. It cannot afford the consequences of irresponsible Indian actions. Today, Pakistan remains firmly committed to upholding the ceasefire and promoting an environment of regional stability. However, at a time when international efforts are being made for regional peace and stability, the statements emerging from India and particularly the political leadership reflect an aggressive and belligerent approach. India is fabricating misleading narratives to justify their aggression. These rhetorics and based on lie statements must stop. Mr. Chairman, the Indian authorities have spotted the Pahalgam attack to launch a massive crackdown in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. There are reports that over 2,800 Kashmiri leaders and people were arrested or questioned in the immediate aftermath of the attack. The Draconian Public Safety Act was slapped on at least 75 of them. The police carried out extensive searches at multiple residences of the local Kashmiris. Around 3 dozen houses were razed to ground through the use of explosives. Following a directive from the central government, the authorities in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir started reporting Pakistani nationals within their respective jurisdictions. It is reported that around 100 Pakistani nationals, mostly women, are identified for deportation. The directive inter alia resulted in split of families and children being separated from their mothers. There were reports of clashes with the Kashmiri students studying in India. In the first 6 days after the Pahalgam attack, at least 17 incidents of intimidation or violence against Kashmiri students were reported in different Indian states. Mr. Chairman, the extremist elements in India spread anti-Kashmiri narratives in India with Islamophobic undertones. We are grateful to the OIC Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission for issuing a strong statement expressing deep concern over the alarming rise in Islamophobia, hate-motivated violence, and targeted reprisal attacks in India and Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in the aftermath of the Pahalgam attack. Ladies and gentlemen, in the last 78 years, India has tried different methods to consolidate its occupation of the large parts of Jammu and Kashmir. However, an intensified campaign to Indianize Kashmir and transform its people into a disempowered community has been in full swing since 5th of August 2019. Mr. Chairman, in the last 6 years, the Indian authorities have taken a series of legislative, judicial and administrative steps aimed at altering the demographic structure and political landscape of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. To crush that sense, the Indian authorities have created an environment of fear and intimidation in Jammu and Kashmir. Draconian laws such as Public Safety Act, Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and Unlawful Activities Act offer impunity to the Indian forces to arrest or kill any person and destroy any property. Since 5th of August 2019, 990 Kashmiris have been killed, another 2,465 were injured and tortured. The number of critical prisoners remains in thousands. Properties of Kashmiri activists are being confiscated as a punishment. The Indian authorities have outlawed 16 political parties under a counter-terrorist law, the Unlawful Activity Prevention Act of India. The Office of All Party Rules Conference in Srinagar has also been seized. Mr. Chairman, Eid prayers at Srinagar's historic Jama Masjid have not been allowed for the last several consecutive years. We sitting here at Rumma should take notice of this for the last 7 years. You know, the Eid prayers could not be offered to Muslims at the historic Jama Masjid in Srinagar. What a shame. Friday prayers at the mosque are also prohibited at times. The chief cleric at the mosque and a renowned Kashmiri leader, Rubaroo, is intermittently placed under house arrest, denying him the opportunity to address important religious gatherings. There are government media which has been made to follow the official line through various coercive measures. Ladies and gentlemen, the international human rights organizations and the civil society have extensively documented human rights violations in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Amongst others, these human rights abuses have been documented by the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and the Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation in separate reports. A number of UN special procedures have also expressed concerns about different facets of this dismal situation. Ladies and gentlemen, last year, the Human Rights Committee in Geneva made several important observations about the situation in occupied Jammu and Kashmir during the review of India's 4th periodic report on implementation of the provisions of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The committee recommended that India should review its counterterrorism laws for being non-compliant with the ICCPR. The Human Rights Committee also urged India to ensure that the counterterrorism legislation is not applied to crack down on human rights defenders, journalists, peaceful protesters, and political opponents. Mr. Chairman, India organized elections of its lower house of Parliament Lok Sabha and a so-called Legislative Assembly of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in April, May and September, October 2024, respectively. While India claimed that such steps showed its commitment towards democratic norms, let me emphasize that any electoral exercise pursuant to the Indian Constitution cannot serve as a substitute to grant of the right to self-determination to the Kashmiri people. Mr. Chairman, in the eyes of international law, any process subservient to the Indian Constitution cannot be invoked to determine the final status of Jammu and Kashmir, which is an internationally recognized disputed territory. Mr. Chairman, the Indian leaders have been making unwarranted claims about the territories of Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Baltistan for some recent years. The frequencies of these irresponsible statements has increased in the recent past. While Pakistan is acting in a responsible manner and upholding the ceasefire on the line of control, the Indian leaders' irresponsible statements constitute a threat to the entire regional peace. The international community, especially the members of this conflict group, should take cognizance of such statements.
बोल में नायब वज़ीर आज़म इसहाक डार तकरीब से खिताब कर रहे थे। उनकी जानिब से ये कहा गया कि इजलास में शिरकत पर सबका शुक्रगुजार हूँ।